Right, let's look at the second case. So insofar as the second case is concerned, just to scroll down here. Right, so the role of leadership in social responsibility, and obviously within the context of Nestle. So you can see Q1. So I think everything around leadership starts at the top. It starts with your board of directors, it starts with your CEO, and it really is making sure that we account for sustainability and social responsibility issues in the overall mission and vision of the organization. So when we give direction to the organization in its entirety, it's important that there are components of social responsibility, that there are components of sustainability built into that. So in terms of the implementation and monitoring of CSR, everything happens around leadership. So generally, each leader in the organization, and in particular those leaders at the top of the organization, would have as part of their KPIs those key elements in terms of the difference that they make from a community, from a social perspective. And I think the truth is that when we think of where we are in the world, and because of the idea of globalization, is that we have these responsibilities, but also built into the organization are those capabilities to step into those areas where government and NGOs don't work, to make a difference in communities, to make a difference in terms of promoting the wellness within broader society. So from a leadership perspective, I think the first one, it's about integrity and it's about honesty and it's about decency, but it's also knowing what your responsibility is and realizing that to do that, we need these kinds of individuals, individuals and how the business operates, but also how social responsibility fits into the broader purpose of the business. There has to be a real passion in terms of the natural environment for people, for making a difference, real empathy from a compassion perspective. The sense of humor of it is really just this moment when it gets overwhelming. I think we spoke about it in class that if we had to start somewhere, where would we start from a CSR perspective? And there's so much need in South Africa that it's impossible to actually find where to start. And then obviously some sort of vision, and you will build into your vision the notion that an organization has a role to play in social responsibility. I clearly love saying notion today. So the second one, stakeholder engagement. So when we look at stakeholders, I think the key thing is in the past, it was the attitude from organizations that we know better, that we will simply just provide. And unfortunately, that's when we become an organization that works from a charity perspective, from a philanthropic perspective. I think in order to address the needs of stakeholders effectively, we need to find out what those needs are. And that requires serious dialogue and dialogue from your employees right through to every supplier, right through every community that is affected by your supply chain. And then the second one is to take that feedback and accommodate it in your strategic planning. So when we look at the definition of a stakeholder, it's anyone who's impacted by the organization and the organization's and operations. Without these individuals, an organization will not exist. And key in terms of that, it is our impact from an economic, environmental, and social perspective. So when I say to you, whenever you get stuck in the exam and you have a blank, write people, planet, profit, I will find marks on the basis of that. The specific stakeholders, you can see their managers, employees, shareholders, suppliers. I think the one that I would put in there would obviously be communities. The modern definition also includes the natural environment as a stakeholder. So from an engagement perspective, the modern definition of sustainable success and long-term strategic sustainable success is that one there, maximizing wealth creation for your stakeholders. And if that is the basis of how you approach CSR, you cannot go wrong from a stakeholder initiative, from looking after the interests of your stakeholders. And then just the kind of things that drive us in accommodating our stakeholders. It is the right thing to do. These individuals have made organizations very wealthy, but it also gives us a decent advantage from an image perspective that people want to do business with those organizations that are seen to be good. And you can see just some of the other elements there. So the approaches to stakeholder engagement, inside out, essentially the decisions are taken inside the organization. We communicate with stakeholders and we hope that we get it right from a needs perspective. There is some criticism. I think the second one is where we spend a lot of time understanding our stakeholders and understanding how, when we develop over time, how they will be impacted and how we can look after their interests long term. Be a little bit selective when you decide what to put into your discussion there, guys. And then just benefits of corporate social responsibility. I know this question is appears in a number of the cases. I think we've done this extensively. People want to work for companies that are seen to do good. I also think the idea that when you start looking after your stakeholders and you start looking after, in particular, employees, the knock-on effect would be productivity and high levels of motivation. From a natural environment perspective, because you start taking care of the natural environment, you become more efficient. You recycle. You take care of putting smokestacks on your chimneys, etc. And then from a market share perspective, I think customers want to do business with companies that do good. And then, you have significant lower cost and risk in terms of claims against the organization. You can also see some of the other bits and pieces, but it really is just the idea that people want to do business with companies that are seen to do good, and the knock-on effect is long-term profitability. Any questions around that one? Okay, I'll stop the recording again. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.